Your friends, your friends. Radio friends again. Radio friends again. We've got a lot to share.
Hey, everybody who's weathered the storm. Welcome to this edition of Radio Friends again for October 11, 2024. And got a nice group of people out there so far. And I saw the people may be dropping in as we move along. It's the kind of show you can come in and out of, leave early, come in late, whatever you want. I'm Steve Parker here in Berlin. And looking around the room, we've got John Landry, who is he's over there in East Hampton. And
Good
Bob
morning.
is here. Hi, Bob. Hi, Bob.
Hello, hello.
Okay, we've got
Which Bob do you mean?
grab your Bob Craig. We've got Tracy Carmen.
Morning.
We've got we got the judge.
Good morning. I'm here in my presidential campaign headquarters in Marlborough, Connecticut.
Russ Otis, where are you? Are you out in the vineyard?
Yes.
Oh, I love that. Pat Sheehan, north or south? Where are you?
Beautiful Cheshire, Connecticut.
Back on the home base. And Bob Marks, Vero Beach.
Vero Beach.
You guys survived so far. And Ron Pell's here. Hi, Ron.
I am just about a mile from where Pat is, maybe two.
There's Jim Harrington, and he's in Pittsburgh.
Hi, guys.
And Jerry Towers here. Jerry, where are you coming to us from today?
I'm coming from Longmeadow, Mass.
You're next to me here.
Right next to Tracy, yeah.
Cool. All right, Bob, Jim had asked you a question before we went on the air, so maybe let's start out, Jim, related to the Florida weather. What was your question for Bob, Jim?
Our friend Bob lives in Vero Beach, and they just got hammered, right? Bob, didn't you guys get hit with Milton in all its force?
Yeah, we missed Helene over here. I mean, we had some of the effects of it, but then Milton came out of nowhere, it seemed, and was a category 1, then it was a category 5, and it blew up so quickly. It's like, what happened? And then it was coming from the West Coast, and it showed us in the cone. Vero Beach is often in the cone, and then sometimes the hurricane wobbles, and then we're out of the cone. But this time we stayed in the cone, and everybody thought that, it's no big deal because it was going to be a category 1 by the time it hit our coast, and we're going to be fine. But then as I found out, the winds were just unbelievable. And then people started talking about tornadoes. And what I understand is there were more tornadoes concentrated in our area than almost any other area. And I've seen the pictures. I mean, it's just incredible. Blew up buildings and toppled over 18-wheelers, cars and trucks everywhere. And we had a lot of flooding everywhere. People lost a lot. There were loss of life just south of us in Fort Pierce at a place called Spanish Lakes, where a lot of retired people had homes. There were 125 homes in Spanish Lakes that were utterly destroyed. And I guess their death toll is now up to 10, from what I understand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I hear that you guys got 124 tornado warnings, the second most tornado warnings of any state in the country, in Florida, because of the warnings you got because of Milton.
Well, I know one thing. My phone kept on, with the alerts, the tornado alerts, take cover, go into a inside closet or your bathroom or whatever. And I had my generator. I had 3 5-gallon cans of gas ready for when we lost power. Now, thankfully, we here in my neighborhood, which is called Three Oaks, it's a villa community. We were spared, the destruction, even though just a few miles from us where the Vero Beach airport is, there was a tornado that touched down there and it ripped apart one of our sheriff's departments or police department headquarters. And then just south of us, of course, it ripped apart the sheriff's department where they had the vehicles. They had all their emergency vehicles. And the whole building, I think it was like 10,000 square feet, came toppling down and wiped out at least half of their fleet. So this was no small storm. It was incredibly powerful, mainly because of the tornado activity, which we had never seen before.
Yeah, and those tornadoes were not little water spouts; they were serious tornadoes.
They
Has
were.
anyone heard from
I
Ted
saw.
Dallacou at all? He was in Venice, which is I
Yeah,
think
that's where the storm came in, right in that
right.
area.
I know. I just Angela, my gal, was just telling me she spoke to her niece, and they were saying that apparently was it Melbourne, Ange? Yeah, Melbourne Airport got around a 30-foot hole in the ceiling of the airport from the storm, and these but of in the roof of it, and I guess like the size of a basketball court. So they've been having a lot of stuff going on.
You
And,
see,
and
the Tampa Bay Rays stadium lost the roof.
Yeah, that was eerie to see that because
Yeah.
that was supposed to be a staging area for all of the like FP&L and all the other emergency people. And they
DeSantis
had
was
to move it
smart
over to
enough.
Raymond James. They moved it to Raymond
DeSantis was
James.
smart enough to move all that stuff out of there before the roof came down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it really is just a cloth roof, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob,
Now,
did you have rain as well, or I mean, obviously there was a torrential rain on the West Coast, but on the East Coast, did you have heavy rain or just the tornado activity?
No, we had torrential rain. It just rained, and I live on what's called a Florida lake, which means it's man-made, and so my backyard is from my screen lanai. It goes down about, I don't know, 30 feet to the water, and I was watching, the rain come down, and the water level kept on rising and rising and rising, and I'm thinking, there's no way it's going to come up to where my main floor is. And it didn't, but it rose so quickly, it got scary. That's how much rain we had in such a short period of time.
wow.
Glad you're here, Bob.
Yeah, thanks. We were blessed. God spared us, but unfortunately, for those people who lost homes and businesses and their lives, that's so unfortunate. Our prayers go out to them.
Yeah, it's Lee. What about where you're at? Lee Gordon's here.
Yeah, it's weird. We got some fairly heavy rain, and it was windy, but nothing. I never closed my hurricane shutters because it was it was just raining and windy and but not to the level of destruction around here. Yesterday was a nicer day here than today, even though yesterday was supposed to be the day that the hurricane remnants were still there. It was windy. It's very windy for the first half of yesterday, but it was sunny after, or at least partly sunny after that. And then, but somewhere between me and Bob, there were tornadoes. There was a tornado in Palm Beach Gardens that ripped a big chunk of the roof off of Publix that's under construction. And I don't know if you saw it, but somewhere in that tornado in Palm Beach Gardens picked up a dumpster and dropped it onto the roof of a house.
Wow.
So yeah, so I've seen a picture of basically a house with a big dumpster sticking out of it. Unfortunately, they could use the dumpster, but not where it is.
Right.
And
Saves time
and
for the
my
cleanup.
brother's house is on the Gulf Coast, just south of where the hurricane hit landfall. And he told me that his house, and he's not that far from the water. And originally there was supposed to be 15-foot storm surge, which I assume if it had gotten to be 15 feet, it house. But he said no damage to his house, but he's got no electricity. But fortunately for him, he's not there yet. He's still up north. But
Lee, where are you in Florida, Lee?
I'm in Boynton Beach, which is
East Coast.
yeah, it's East Coast. I'm 10 miles south of Mar-a-Lago.
Okay. Now there was just a Angela saw something on the news last night about Helene in North Carolina, and then they said the only communication they had was AM radio. Nothing else seemed to be working for them, and that was really what was their lifeline. during this whole thing. So that's something for all of us to keep in mind. Go figure that AM radio.
Well, you know, it's
Did you know
amazing.
that some Congress people put a law, want to put a law through demanding that AM is remaining in all automobiles? Jim, that's what you were about to say, right?
No, I was just going to say what amazes me is that these guys just went through a massive hurricane and they're able to communicate via the internet to us right now.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, this Angela gave me that. It was a CBS thing, how a local radio station became a lifeline after Helene roared through North Carolina. I'll get that. I'll get that piece out to you guys. But yeah, it's amazing. They're crazy. They're really crazy, and that really was the only
Amazing
way
to me is that there was staff on any of these AM radio stations out in, well, I guess Asheville is not the middle of nowhere, but what, you know, it must not be owned by Odyssey or Iowa.
There were only two men in there, so somehow two men, and knowing the people that are so passionate about this business, they could have been two guys they blew out last year, and they will still found their way into the radio station to help out their brothers and sisters that were being hurt by a storm.
And they must have had an emergency generator, and the people who were listening, a lot of the people who were listening on the radio had these hand crank radios that they can, you know, that they can power up by without needing to charge them.
Well, you know, back in 2004, we had back-to-back hurricanes right here, and it was Francis and Jean, and I think they hit us directly coming from the Atlantic Ocean, and we're just right on the ocean here. They hit us within like 3 weeks of one another, and I was on the air at Christian FM, which is, you know, FM radio. Both times I was sitting there doing my show, both times when the hurricanes hit, which was really strange. And we had to run on generator power. And we had, you know, we carry the governor's speeches, and he was on regularly, just like DeSantis is for this hurricane. And we had all of the National Guard people coming in. We kept the whole area informed. People found us on the radio and became longtime listeners after that. But that was a tremendous storm, or two storms, and people lost their roofs and things like. But this, because of the tornadoes, I think we had even more severe damage from this storm than we did back, you know, with Francis and Jean.
There was so many. There were, I heard that there were 129 tornado warnings, and there were at least 70 tornadoes. I mean, that's, we didn't get affected by the hurricane itself where I am, but there were tornadoes fairly close.
Yeah, it was one of the things I've been helping a buddy of mine out here who owns Connecticut Home Generator Services, and they've been selling generators. It's part of Newington Electric. They've been selling generators for probably 30, 40 years or more. These, and the Generacs, like I hear like 8 out of 10 of these things are Generacs, and primarily right in all the storm reporting on the weather channels and everything else. You got Generac generator commercials on there, and they're, you know, telling people that, you know. So my job is I just call around. He's got over 7,000 customers in Connecticut. And all I'm doing is calling around and say, hey, is your generator okay? You know, if they need any help. But I'll tell you something, the thing that gets me crazy, and I love the man with all my heart, I'm going, you got to be on the radio, for God's sakes. It's wonderful if you're telling everyone on television to get a generator. But remember, the TVs probably won't be on if the power goes out.
Generac traded up 8% in advance of the hurricane and traded down 8% after the hurricane went through, because it wasn't as bad, they said, in terms of the number of people who would be able to buy and install generators. It's interesting to watch how same thing happened with Home Depot stock, and you see the insurance companies in Florida and how these things react almost on a day-by-day basis, depending on the storm track.
So
yeah, I have a Generac story. I've got a friend of mine who spends from May to November up on Banner Elk, which, by the way, got hit really hard by Helene. He lives up on the mountain there in a private community. And I was on the phone with him, and he was telling me that they're locked in. They couldn't get down off the mountain because the bridge that connects the entrance to their community was out. And when they finally did get let out, because there were a lot of volunteers who came down to remove trees and made a way for them to go through their community golf course that's right there in Banner Elk. He got back to Vero Beach several weeks sooner than they expected to, and he lives on a 10-acre ranch. You know, he's got a barn with horses and all that, and he has a Generac whole house generator. And in advance of the storm, you know, we were talking. I said, "How are you doing, Drew? How's everything going?" He says, "Well, Bart, I'll tell you, we have this whole house, and we can't even use it because we discovered that the Generac technicians came during the summertime to check it, and they found a leak, and they shut it down. They never contacted us to let us know that it needed servicing and needed fixing. And they came back to Vero and they thought they were all set. They went to turn it on and realized it was broken. And there was no time, of course, to get it fixed. I just thought that was such an incredible.
That won't happen with our crew. Trust me, we'll take good care of you. Well, you know, the funny thing is when these generators, they first of all, Generac comes on and says you got to have one. Well, there in many cases they can't keep up with the demand. So here you are, you're sending people to call for generators that they can't get. And that drives us crazy when we've gotten hit in here in Connecticut and you just don't have them. You're buying as many units as you can, you don't have them. But then again, same thing. You have people that don't maintain them, people that don't, you know, they should really have them looked at annually, like any other piece, like any furnace in your house, but they don't do that. But, you know, the funny thing is, a lot of guys who've never even installed one, electricians go, "Oh, we'll put one in for you." But, and they mean, and I'm not making an infomercial here, and it's not just for us. But if you have a crew with your electrical company that this is what they do, they know how to install them, they know the landscaping, they know how to put the pad in and do the right work. It costs more money, but it's done right. We've had people that get one, but it wasn't even hooked up properly. So more often than not, what you hear from people is, "Yeah, I spent, you know, 10,000, 20, whatever to get one, and I never had to use it." That's kind of what you want. You don't want to use it, but yeah, it's a perfect example of, you know, promote the hell out of it, but make sure that you have the product if you're telling people to buy it, because otherwise you get.
Overson posted on Facebook night or yesterday that he's planning to get a generator today. I said, good luck with that. I mean, today's not to this like it's like really trying to buy a snow shovel the day it snows. It's not going to happen. When we had the big ice storm in 2011, and on my street we lost power for 11 days, and I needed, although Comcast came the next day and hooked the cable back up and the internet, but the electricity was gone for 11 days, and I needed to work, and I went looking for an inverter so that I could power my cable box and my laptop off my car. I had to drive to North Haven to a circuit city before I could find an inverter that I could run my business off, and it's still in the back of my car.
You know, the AM radio stations that operate on generator have to be old line stations that bought the generators way back, because AM needs so much power, so much more power than FM, that nobody's putting in, you know, 200 kilowatt generators anymore. And so even if you own an AM station now and need to replace your generator, it's very expensive.
If you look at the picture behind me, Chris has told me that that they're going to be tearing the brick building down, but the white building behind there, that building is just a big garage with a gasoline powered generator in there. It's been there for more than 50 years, and that's just the power of the train. Those studios are now at the top of the hill. Well, they were at the top of the hill. They're downtown now, but when they were at the top of the hill, I remember it was summertime. We had just gotten a brand new generator installed, and it was the GHO. And so it was a big deal, you know, everybody's there. And there was a storm and power went out, and we had this brand new generator, and it hadn't been fueled yet. So they had to go scrambling. They had to go scrambling for fuel oil, because it was a diesel generator.
Oh
They
God.
just called one of the heating oil companies, which would be easy to get out there in the summertime because they're not going around delivering oil.
Well, Ron must remember, and Ron and some of the guys at DRC, you must remember at the 869 when that generator would fire up behind our place, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Wayne was on top of that. That's for sure. Yeah.
I know we've got a Kohler. Well, hopefully with Odyssey, I don't know what's happening anymore, but we had a Kohler there, and I went by the back window the other day, and the Kohler systems are amazing. They're very, very expensive.
Great.
Just incredible stuff.
Kohler is a great brand.
Yep. And the difference is between Kohler and Generac, not that many dollars. However, the perception of Generac is their number one. Kohler is actually a better unit.
You know, I think they're both made in Wisconsin, I believe.
Oh, really?
I think they're both like right
Kohler,
down the road.
definitely.
American made, for God's sakes.
I think Briggs and Stratton is in Wisconsin too.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Briggs and Stratton.
Harley Davidson used to be.
In 2011, we bought a whole house generator after the storm, natural gas, and I forget what it cost, $10,000 or $12,000. And since then, I've told my wife, because it runs like 10 minutes every week. They test it, and they come out every year.
Yep.
It's cost us about $10,000 per kilowatt hour so far.
Yeah, it's like fire insurance. You pay for it, but you don't want to use it.
You don't want to use it. That's right.
Or life insurance.
Exactly.
Well,
It's
But,
interesting that things are still made in America, that the manufacturing of those units are still based in Wisconsin, and there's a lot of manufacturing in this country that, you know, we have not paid the greatest attention to, but so much has moved offshore. These are great companies, and you know, it's so important for us to continue, not just for creating the jobs that are there, but just the solid basis of our infrastructure. You think about something like knocking out power just from a storm. Think what would happen if in fact we got to a point where somebody decided to, shut down your internet systems that run your banking systems behind everything. It's really frightening when you see some of these outages that are happening and some of the ransomware issues that are out there, people messing with the systems now that we totally rely on.
We moved to Marlboro in 2019, and if a squirrel blinks, we lose power in Marlboro. So we had a 22 kilowatt Generac installed in I think it was July of 2020, and about 2 weeks later we had that Hurricane Isaiah, whatever its name was. So we were out of power. That thing ran 2 weeks after it was installed. It ran for 72 hours straight, giving us power. So that was money well invested.
They should demand, when these municipalities permit gas stations, new gas stations, they should make it a requirement that the gas stations have a generator.
Watch out. Wait a minute. I'm going to give you a warning right up front about that one. And it's only because I happened to be at the state capitol when that was one of the things. I was working on a bill with some other folks, and that was one of the things that came up. A couple of things to be concerned of. If you're an independent gas station owner, that could break your back. And the other part of it is, if you're a gas station and they make sure, and you have a generator, well, once your pumps are dry, all you can do is try to sell milk and bread. So it's a tough thing if you're not a big group. If you're a big group of gas stations, like you're saying, Russ, that's great. But for the little guys right now that are really still struggling to try to do it, like the service shops and all that kind of stuff, if they made that a law, that would be tough. And I never thought of it that way until I was in there, and you go with these little tiny guys that are still, and I know they're going to be gone eventually, these little family-owned services and stuff. But if they did make it an actual law, that could be tough.
But Steve, you know, they can separate the circuits, the emergency circuits, and they can just take the pumps and put them on one circuit and attach the generator to that circuit. And at the outside, how much could it cost for that? $30,000-$40,000? Okay, well, that's what it costs to ensure that if there is a total power outage, we can still pump gasoline.
Well, yeah, but
for new construction.
I got to.
For new construction, Lee, yes.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, they can't get the fuel they need. So once the pumps are dry, and that's what they're saying.
I got you.
They say
once
we can't get any more gas into our pumps, that's the problem we have.
Yeah, two of the
terminals.
I don't understand that world at all. I just happen to witness the discussion. Now I'm not leaving, but Angela says I better move my car out of her way. So you guys talk amongst yourselves.
we had a situation last year where there was flooding in Fort Lauderdale at the fuel terminal, and there was no gas stations were all in this area were all out of fuel. And so as soon as we're done here, I'm going to the nearest gas station because I heard that 2 of the fuel depots in Florida are inoperative because of the storm. So I was tempted to go. I was tempted to go fill up 2 days ago when I was out anyway, and decided not to do it because it was raining, and now I may end up paying the price for that.
What is the price of gasoline down there?
About $3 a gallon for regular.
I think Costco around here is down to about 265.
Wow.
Yeah.
Costco's $3.33 for premium.
When I was in New Jersey last week, it was 287 or something like that. But yesterday, I drove by several stations. There were 301, 303, 306, something like that for regular for the regular gas.
No, I wonder what the chances are of, like I said, my generator's natural gas, but I would imagine if it's bad enough, I don't know if they can they pump the natural gas, or is that?
Who's your supplier of natural gas in your area? Who supplies natural gas? Is it Yankee Gas?
No, it's Eversource.
Well, Eversource gets it from Yankee Gas, so it's
CNG
Yankee Gas. I
up in
checked
your
yesterday because they just announced a 30% rate hike for the coming season. Welcome to Connecticut or New England.
Wow.
America.
You don't need to pump natural gas. It either comes or it doesn't.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, if it's plumbed into the gas line, if it's not, then you need propane tanks.
No, it's plumbed into mine. Mine happened to be into the gas line.
My generators run on propane, and I keep 500-gallon tanks filled up all the time.
And how long would that last you? A year?
500 gallons. Well, it depends. If we had a complete power failure and it had to run 8 hours a day, or for 8 hours a day, it'd probably last a month.
Well, the good news is propane doesn't go bad, so
yeah,
it can sit there forever.
Well, if it gets water in it, it'll go bad. I actually, when I was in college, I lived in a really crappy house there was a reason I was paying $50 a month for rent, but the propane it had propane tanks, and they ran the line outside the building, and we had a cold snap. This was in New Hampshire, and it was so cold that the bathroom was in the middle of the building, and there was ice in the toilet, and it was so cold that the lines that brought the propane into the one radiator in the house froze. So we had no heat, ice in the toilet. I had to put on every piece of clothing I had just to keep from freezing.
Lee, what do you want for $50?
There you go.
Exactly.
And it wasn't really 50 because I had it was actually 40 now that I think about it. I had a roommate, so we split it. It was 20 apiece.
Oh, well, that explains that.
Well, in that case, I hope you at least watched your diet.
Oh, God. Hey, all right, guys. Any other comments regarding the storm or generators or anything before we switch over and let's talk about our friend JJ? Anything else we'd like to add? All right. I think we covered it.
Glad we live elsewhere.
This being the 11th of October, we had a real heavy hit within the last couple of days, and that was the loss of J.J. Jefferies. So I wanted to make sure we primarily this morning wanted to open up. We didn't know it was gonna, we had all these things happening this week. So whoever would like to chime in and maybe Bob, I got the notice from Bob Craig. So why don't you give us a little bit about JJ?
Well, actually, I really didn't know JJ that well. I was in his company a couple of times. Jack Casey sent me the information on that. Jack knew him pretty well. As a matter of fact, I was up in Maine a couple of weeks ago, and Jack and I were talking months before about going up and visiting JJ up in Portland. He wound up in the hospital with cancer a few months ago, I guess it was. And he really had a tough time with it. According to what I read, he was in really deep pain toward the end, and then just passed yesterday. But there have been a lot of accolades about him online. People that worked with him, people, I don't know if anybody on the screen here has worked with him or knew JJ. Did anybody know him personally?
Yes.
He was we like you probably definitely. He was an extremely funny guy. He had great sense of humor. And Jim, I think you knew him, didn't you?
I met him when I met him at the St. George Hotel
Yeah.
in a restaurant. I was in school at the time, and I was in
Mhm.
awe of the guy. I wanted to be a jock at the time. I used to listen all the time religiously. It was like one of my college courses. I had to listen to JJ, and his timing was amazing. And he could do more in like 15 seconds than a lot of guys could do in 15 minutes. I mean, he was just funny. He was rapid. His timing was great. And when I met him, I walked up to him and um, I figured, well, this is my only opportunity. And he was having lunch with a friend, and I kind of inserted myself, and I said, "Excuse me, I just want to tell you how much I enjoy your program and all you do on the air. I'm a big fan, and I don't know, maybe I might have said, and I want to do what you do too, someday." And he he was such a gentleman. He stopped doing what he was doing at the time. I mean, he could have easily said, "Excuse me, I'm having lunch," but instead he stopped and he said, "Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate." He was just he didn't make me feel small at the time, and I was thinking as I went along in my career, I always reminded myself of that situation. Never diminish somebody. When they come over to say something nice to you, take a moment. You know, and because he did to
I
me.
think I remember telling you one time that McDonough, myself, Bob Cohen, and Bo Raines in 1970, Bo had worked with him at WRKO. He was a board op there. And then Bo came down to DRC where he board opted for us for a while. And he wanted to go down and visit JJ in Philly when JJ was at WFIL. So the four of us trooped down to Philly one time. We had no place to stay, nothing. We just went down. And he gave us a tour of WFIL, which is still, or at that time was in the Rotund building where the TV still is, but radio is not. Anyhow, we went across the street to the Holiday Inn and spent the evening with Chuck Knapp and JJ and just had a grand old time talking radio. JJ just loved to talk about radio. There's a great letter that was posted. As a matter of fact, Jack sent it to me this morning that John Guerin posted when JJ was leaving WLS in Chicago to get into ownership. And they were making mention of, or John was in the letter, about JJ's inflatable furniture. JJ was very frugal. And I think the more you think about it, here's a guy in radio who obviously was moving around a bit, and it was a brilliant idea. Have inflatable furniture. If you don't have a family, roll it up, pack it up, and go. There's your sofa, there's your chair, whatever. And it was a funny letter that John wrote. I don't know if any of you know John. I met him a couple of times.
Which
and
John?
John Guerin.
John. Oh, yeah, John Garrett. He was from CBS FM.
Yeah. He was just a brilliant program director.
I think he went to LS.
Yeah, he was at CAU here in Philly. He got the FM started, and then went up to CBS FM, and then WLS in Chicago.
He was the program manager at CBS FM in '74, and he had me come down to his house in Darien, and I had dinner with him, and he offered me a job in '74. And at the time, my wife was pregnant with our second child, and it was just like the wrong time, and I had to say no. And usually, when you say no in this business, it never happens again.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
but
Right.
like we had our child, and the opportunity came along again. I never knew whether he put my name back in the in the hat, but I didn't burn any bridges, which is good.
Mhm.
And John was a great guy, and he's still, he's got the fountain of youth or something, because I see pictures of him on
Yeah,
Facebook, and he's jogging or walking to work in Chicago or something like that, and he looks like he's in great shape.
There was
Unlike
also
some of us.
some things posted about his ownership with Bob Fuller, and how they got that group started, and they did very, very well. I mean, they sold at the right time after putting it together, and JJ was
I
just
had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Fuller back at WBZ in 1975, or before that, 71. And subsequently, I met JJ, and I had a lot of times with the doctor and JJ, and a special treat was the 50th anniversary of WRKO that they held a few years ago. Perry Urey was still there, and JJ and everybody. It was a great event, and I have some wonderful photos from that. And also, there was an annual party that was thrown in Portland, Maine, that Bob and JJ would put together. And one of the funniest, JJ was just constantly up and laughing and so bright. And as Judge said a few minutes ago, he could put 15 minutes into 15 seconds. But the funny part was that whenever you took his picture, he made it a point of having the fickled finger of fate in the picture. And that was JJ. And I heard he was doing okay about 2 or 3 weeks ago and holding court with everybody. And it was just a shock to hear that he passed. And I guess the last couple of days was pretty painful.
I got to Boston in 1961, September of 1961 at Boston University, and I discovered WMEX. And it was Ed Hyder was doing mornings as Fenway, great jock. And of course, there was Woo Woo Ginsburg at night. But my favorite was the afternoon jock, Melvin X. Melvin, who was J.J. Jeffrey. He was just a fantastic jock, and that was a fantastic radio station, much better than anything I'd ever heard in New York.
Yeah,
Jim Harrington mentioned that he lived in the Hotel St. George when he went to school. And he and I apparently lived in the Hotel St. George at the same time, because we went to the same school at the same time.
I didn't know
that WRKO was located right there on the first floor.
Bob, I didn't know it. I swear to God, I was so naive back then. I didn't realize or didn't make the connection that in the same building at the time was WRKO. I know they moved over to the Government Center later.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, that's when I first became aware of J.J. Jeffrey and Chuckles Knapp.
Your leader,
because I used
baby.
to listen to them all the time and thinking, man, these guys are something else. And then this morning I learned that J.J. Jeffrey had died because Jim Davis, who lives right here in Vero Beach, is a longtime friend of mine, and we had on one of our Radio Friends Again sessions. He's worked all over the country with major radio stations. He posted a picture of him along with JJ, and he announced that JJ had passed away. And by the way, Bob Craig, he mentioned that story about having the inflatable furniture because DJs are always on the move. But in that picture, he mentioned Long John was in that picture as well. I imagine that was Long John Wade, whose brother Don Wade also worked at WLS doing the morning show with his wife Roma. And then Don Wade later moved to Vero Beach. I had an opportunity to meet him. But JJ, I'll tell you, one of the greats in radio business of all time.
One of those guys, you never forgot his delivery. I still can hear, if I think for a second, I can hear him doing a break.
Oh, yeah. I was listening last evening to an air check from December of '68. I think Bo Raines gave it to me. I don't know if anybody has that. It's just absolutely classic JJ with the lines, the inflection, the dramatic approach that he had to doing. Everything was succinct, but it was just excellent, excellent top 40 radio.
Bruder must
Hey,
have.
Bob. Hey, Bob. Bob Raines left a lot of air checks with me before he passed, and I may have that. I'll check. Now that you mentioned that, I'll have it. I'll have to check. I'll play him on my.
It was right around
my
Christmas
Atari.
time. It was right around Christmas time. It was December of '68, because all the songs in there, you remember for that period of time.
Sure.
Both Sides Now with Judy Collins and yada yada. But it's
Cape Cod, man. I remember being with my dad up in Truro on Cape Cod and listening to JJ all the time. He was just fantastic. Again, I was like 11 or 12 years old, but he was incredible.
But WRKO was a great station. It was.
They probably had that jingle, the "Merry Christmas" from WRKO, Bob. That's probably on the air check. If it was Christmas time.
Yeah, it was right before, a couple of weeks maybe before the holiday, because the spots reflected that were on the air, and a lot of live stuff. As a matter of fact, there was something on line 2 of JJ's first day at WLS in Chicago. And man, the amount of live spots they had on the air there was like more live spots than there were recorded, and all delivered with that punctuating delivery and inflection that JJ would give to it. If you can, I think it's on a SoundCloud feed that was put out.
Yeah, if anybody's got anything decent, well, they're all excellent, I'm sure. But if there's something that I'd love to post something up on Facebook. Just so people
I've got
hear a little taste of him. Pardon me?
Yeah, I've got a shitload of those things, but most of them are on reel to reel, and I can't convert it to anything else unless I bring it to somebody. As a matter of fact, at our station, we have all the equipment you can imagine, but there is no reel to reel to make any dubs. It's
Look
just
at Tracy's nodding his head up and down like nothing's ever a challenge for Tracy.
Not for Tracy.
Yeah, listen, it's interesting trying to keep old technology working. I've got 26 DAT machines in the house and not one of them works. So, I get it.
Well, what if you did this? And again, I don't know, but is this something where, these are treasures, Bob, but if there was a way to get something to Tracy that he could somehow digitize and get out, that would be great. If it's something you're comfortable enough to do, that could be a treasure for all of us. Plus, like I say, I'd love to post it as long as there's not a problem posting something like that on Facebook.
I'd be surprised if Ed Bruder
must have a reel to reel.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, and he does. I know people that do. There's a guy that is up about 10 miles from me that has an old time recording studio, and I had him do some stuff for me. But he's got reel to reel. He has, you name it, and he kind of reminds me of Bob Coe. If you guys remember Bob Coe at DRC,
oh yeah,
as an engineer, he's kind of like of that mentality. That's real old 1948 radio kind of thought goes into what he does.
Ed Bruder probably has several J.J. Jeffrey air checks already digitized.
Probably does.
I'm sure he does.
Probably.
I'm going to go find my photos in a minute because they're somewhere lost in the computer, but they're here. And again, he's just a great man and so funny, always on. Just
you ever sit down with him and have a drink? He would drink not only gin and tonics, but he was the only person that I knew of that would drink beer with ice in the glass.
My dad did that.
And there were a few of those.
Norm Tebow, who was here last week, the week before, he posted some about having drinks with JJ, and when JJ having gin and tonics, and when JJ had to go to the bathroom, Norm ran over to the bartender and said, "Can you just give me a glass with tonic, just so he could be drinking along without trying to keep up with JJ." I never met JJ, but I was his competitor for a while because their first station was WBLM in Lewiston, Maine, and which my partners and I called Greater LA because we bought a station in Auburn, Maine. at the same time, and WBLM was going strong. That was really at the beginning of when FM was kind of taken over for AM, and we bought an AM station, and BLM was an FM station, and BLM was getting stronger, and we went down the tubes after about 2 or 3 years. But for a while there, we were competitors in Greater LA.
Lee, I want to mention that I had read in that Facebook post by Jim Davis that JJ had been an owner of a group of stations. And when he
Fuller
sold
Jeffrey. Yeah.
J.J. Jeffrey. Yeah.
Yeah.
When he sold it, he came away with something like $65 million.
Yeah, they sold it. I believe they sold Fuller Jeffrey, I think, except WBLM. I think they kept that. But Fuller Jeffrey Broadcasting, I think they sold it to Sconix, and then Sconix eventually folded into one of the big giant ones.
I think it was the oh gosh, the gentleman from Colorado or out west bought them all and made Dr. and JJ very wealthy. And they kept the little main stations. They weren't that little. They're on the market right now for sale because when JJ started to feel poorly, Doc took him over. And, Doc, I guess, is 80, 82 anyway. And so he's been running them up there in Portland for JJ.
Did they own WLOB?
LLB, the Big Jab was the sports station. And when I last visited up there to see Doctor's new home and have lunch with he and JJ. JJ was at the studio working away, producing, doing promos and stuff. He just always did it, wouldn't stop. Just great.
Yeah, it really is amazing, when you think of that, because those are the guys that really stick with you, and it's so strange because, the fact that so many of these things, it was JJ, and then it was the music. And so many people, I mean, even with all these formats and everything, they get it so wrong. I mean, they don't understand that what really kept everybody hooked was the personality. I mean, like look at back to Ron Landry and stuff. I mean, a lot of these guys that just had personalities. All of you guys had personalities that brought the music in. Nobody wants to just listen to a jukebox. No matter what these consultants and everything else say. But guys like that, that's part of your childhood that you remember growing up with. Those are the guys that you emulated. You weren't always going, gee, I want to sing like Frankie Valli, but you probably thought that, hey, I want to do what he's doing. Plus, all of you had so much damn fun. I think that's what you caught when you would listen to guys like JJ.
Well, I think probably the three most essential things for a great radio station: personality, promotion, and production. And if you don't have any of those three, forget it. I mean, you don't
being
have
local
radio. And well, yeah, that goes without saying. Back in the day, that's what it was. Everybody was local.
Frankie Valli. You got your Frankie Valli. What, you go see Frankie recently or what?
Last year at what was this? Some casino out here in the Palm Springs area. I forget the name. I'm getting old. But he was great. He was great. He was well, I think he was 88 then. Just turned 88. Did a great job. I got to tell you, he did a great show. He really did. Not much
2 years ago.
Not much.
Excuse me. 2 years ago, he put out an album of him singing standards with a jazz background. And he sounded very, very much like, I don't know if any of you guys know little Jimmy Scott, who was a jazz singer, little Jimmy Scott, who also, believe it or not, Joe Pesci sounds when he sings a lot like these guys. But Valli actually was able to pull some of it off as a kind of a jazzy vocal singer. Didn't get much attention, but it's kind of an interesting album.
It was interesting. I just saw I just went to see Beautiful Noise at the Bushnell, the Neil Diamond story. And the guy that was the winner of American Idol, Nick Fradiani, I guess I hope I didn't destroy that. Nick was won American Idol. He's from the New Haven area, and he played him on Broadway. So he came into the Bushnell to play Neil Diamond there. But the interesting story, it's all about Neil Diamond's life and how they tie his music to his life. But the thing was, he'd thought about doing it before, but it wasn't until Bob Gaudio said to him, you know, you really should do a musical about your life. Bob Gaudio and, of course, the Jersey Boys. You know, that was amazing. But the when you read he wrote a letter in the beginning of it, at the beginning of the program, it says, you know, from Neil Diamond, and just talking about, you know, how he didn't know if he could, you know, put his life out there like that until he actually spoke to Bob. But boy, I tell you, if you get a chance to see it, it's just an amazing. I mean, and this kid, I mean, he is a kid, Nick, nailed it. As soon as he opens his mouth to start singing, it was really something to see. Great story. It really, really is. But that the motivation behind it was Bob Gaudio from the Four Seasons. Okay, that was it.
Well, you know, I'll jump in for a second. You know, these guys don't want to stop because, you know, if they stop, that's like the end of their life. My niece texted me 2 nights ago. He sends me a picture of Barry Manilow, who was at Radio City Music Hall. He's 81. And she said, I don't know why, but I was thinking of you. And I said, thanks. Nice to be thought of. But there's a picture of Barry Manilow. He's 81. You know, these guys don't want to stop performing because that's like the end of their life.
Yeah, why the hell should you?
Exactly. They can still sing. Why not?
They have tremendous followings. They can sell out, and they have longevity. And you know, most of their music had melody. They had familiarity. That was popular. Why the hell quit?
I don't know how guys like you, Ron. I mean, you had a #1 song, and
no, it wasn't #1. But thanks anyway.
Well,
Jim.
top 10. All right, top 10.
Yeah,
but it was a hit. All right,
It was tight.
Tighter
It was
and tighter.
tight. It was tight.
And I don't know how a guy. Very good, Chuck. I don't know how you walked away from that. I mean, I know it's. You get to a point where you say, "Out of hell with it, I got to go on with my."
Well, you know, it comes down to it. Like, okay, I enjoyed playing the drums, but I didn't want to play the drums till 2 o'clock in the morning anymore. At that point, and I was married, and I had, you know, things were going on in my life that said I wanted to go back. I wanted to get my degree in college, and I couldn't make the two work. Now there were guys in the group. Pepe, the lead singer, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago. You know, he was smart enough. He copyrighted the name of the group, Alive and Kicking. He owned the group essentially. And he played for the next 40 years in, you know, weddings and bar mitzvahs and clubs all over New York. But, you know, never had notoriety, but they would always play. And here's our our top 10 hit. And they always play tighter and tighter. But, you know, he was a working musician and he made, you know, they made money. And matter of fact, when the group closed, when the group shut down after Pepe got sick, the drummer was a female drummer. And which I thought was like the third or fourth drumming iteration since I had left the group, you know, 50 years ago. Bruce Sedano, who was married to Donna Summer, you know, she died, but Bruce kept going. He's got his own career. Bruce, if you Google Bruce Sedano, he has the songs he's written for Dolly Parton. He wrote a song for Michael Jackson. This guy is a phenomenal songwriter. Well, he just turned 76, lives half the year in Milan, Italy, half the year in Los Angeles. And he travels and he tours and he plays little clubs all over the country. You know, no big giant venues. You know, a club that'll seat a couple of hundred. He sells out. He opens up for the Zombies when they go on tour. He's their opening act. He just doesn't want to stop. But I walked away because, you know, I just said I got other things in my life going on, and plus I wanted to get into radio.
Oh, by the way, Barry Manilow's musical director is a Connecticut guy too. So
someone get Ron.
You wanted to have a job instead of a career, huh?
Well, I you know, sometimes I wonder if you know, the road not taken, you know, had I stayed with music and gone into it, but you know, hey, you can't look.
Ron,
you might have had 2 hits.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, right.
Can you imagine if you released the album "Alive and Kicking's Greatest Hit"?
Greatest hit. Yeah, long play. Long play.
Somebody posted on Facebook. I just saw it yesterday. It said, "Did the guy who invented the phrase 1-hit wonder ever come up with another phrase?"
You know, we laugh at that, but he had 100% more hits than a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Well,
so you know,
we were, and we, you know what, and we were good. I mean, we were. See, one of the problems we had is we wanted to be a rock group. We wanted to play rock, not top 40. And we would take all the songs we play. If you listen to our album, you know, it's so different than Tighter, because Tighter was a Tommy James song.
The biggest problem you had was you were on, was it Roulette?
Yeah, Roulette Red.
Yeah.
And Morris Levy, that was a problem too.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why you never made a buck on that, Ron.
Didn't make any money. We
I
made no
know.
money. Matter of fact, he wanted to charge us $30,000 for producing that crazy album that never sold
Yeah.
anything.
Jeez.
Morris was great at that crap.
Bad guy. Bad guy.
Yeah, they said that during the Neil Diamond play, and they show him making his first deal with a record company, and the record company's logo was actually a pistol.
Bang Records.
Yeah, Bang Records. Yeah, exactly.
Bang Records. Yeah, right. Remember
Now,
that?
when you look at when you look at his life, though, Neil Diamond, he was, there were some pretty bad parts. I mean, he walked out of a wife and a baby, and got up to, I guess, his third wife. They don't bring up in the show, but I'll tell you, one of the coolest things, the way the show is set up is it's Neil Diamond now sitting down with his psychiatrist, and she's holding like a book of everything, that all of his albums and all the lyrics and everything he'd done. And she said that's how she wanted to talk to him. And so she'd open up a song and start this thing going. Well, the interesting thing was, as you watch the whole thing develop, first of all, there was no pit. Usually, you would think for a musical, there'd be a pit. And if the Bushnell, you got a great orchestra pit. There was no pit. So, it's kind of strange. And then, but the second half, when they come back, the curtain goes up, all the musicians are up behind them on risers. And for the rest of the show, the music is pretty much, it was they were probably playing backstage all along. But to see all that, but just seeing how it really went along, and the last thing he does is he does like a show, and he says, "Thanks a lot, Hartford. Good night." Right? Then they go back to the Neil Diamond now, and he starts talking about, summing everything up. But then they bring out that Neil Diamond, and those two guys sing together. They both have Neil Diamond's voice. I'm telling you, man, that was amazing. But basically telling pretty much how he put everything out there and lost everything in his life because of the business, but he did say he never would have stopped until they put him in the hole, except for Parkinson's. He said once he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, he goes, that's when he knew the whole thing was over. But, and again, it still goes back to you guys, a lot of you, when you played this music, that was the thread, when you knew enough about these guys. I mean, you hear about guys talking about talent now, they're going off of 3x5 cards or off of their computer or whatever. When you guys would talk about the talent, the records you were playing, you really knew who they were. It was just a whole natural thing behind it, just changed. So it really comes down to, missing all of that, but it was great to go back to the Bushnell, where I saw Neil Diamond perform when I was a kid, dressed in black, sitting on a stool playing an acoustic guitar. So I would definitely recommend that. And also I had mentioned Danny Tedesco's son is working on another documentary now about Wolfman Jack. So that should be pretty cool.
Yeah, Denny.
Huh?
I said Denny Tedesco.
That's right. And his dad was Tony, right?
Tommy. Get it right.
Yeah, especially when I'm talking to the guy, I better have that one right. Unbelievable. Yeah, it was. It's really been something to see. But yeah, JJ was another one of the greats, and I'm gonna certainly miss him. I wish we had gotten him up here too. He would have been great to have on Radio Friends again.
Well, perhaps Dr. Fuller would be amenable to getting on and talking about JJ at some point soon. Dr. Fuller, in the very near future, if he would come on and talk about JJ, I'm sure he'd love to. Different people.
He'll talk about JJ. Chuck Knapp.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. They were pretty tight, those two.
Yeah, I'm in touch with Chuck on a pretty regular basis. So
sure, that'd be terrific.
I should invite him on.
Definitely.
Was Al Gates at RKO at the same time as those guys?
Yes. Yep. Gates did mornings. He did the first show in March of '67 on there. He and the Feathers.
Yeah, Al Gates and Feathers. That was such a great radio station. When I was when senior in high school, the late great Kurt Hansen started a campus radio station. And he's at the end of the hallway in the dormitory taking a survey. Do we you think, what do you think about the idea of having a campus radio station? I said, sign me up. And so I was on like at the very beginning, and so I had a contest. And at the time, WRKO had just their big splash when they became WRKO in 1967 was they gave away a Mustang, a candy apple red Mustang.
Right.
That was their big promotion. So when I started, I gave away a Mustang red candy apple.
Hey, Lee.
There was a very. Go ahead, Ross.
Kurt Hansen was my roommate in boarding school, and we were best friends his entire life.
Oh,
he was a great guy.
Did you go to Mount Herman?
I did.
Oh, geez. Then I didn't know you then, but I was a senior when Kurt was a junior. So
I only went there 1 year at freshman year, and he and I were roommates, and we were best friends from that moment on.
Is anybody in touch with Al Gates at all? He'd be a great guy to get on this line.
He still lives in Connecticut, doesn't he?
I think he's in Rhode Island now.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, we should be able to find him. Yeah, somebody out there's got to have, it is the 6 degrees. Somebody's got to know somebody that knows somebody. That'd be terrific.
I think I may have his email. I'll try to get a hold of him and see if he'd want to come on. I don't know if he's still got it all together. So we'll have to see.
Whatever happened to Kurt Russell, not the actor, but the Kurt Russell that was on the radio?
I don't know.
Was he at the Big D in the early 60s?
Yep. That's why Ed Bruder would probably know. He was another talk about a fast.
Hal, if you can't get Al, maybe you can get Feathers.
He did sales at POP, didn't he?
He was at POP. I'll tell you so. When I was at WPOP, the hanging around with the salesman was more fun than hanging around with any of the jocks on the station. The salesmen at POP, they were absolutely insane. They really were. Gates was one of them.
Oh yeah, I mean, Ron knows. I mean, when we had like Flemming was crazy. I mean, we had a lot of guys, and that was a difference. But I think that, like you're saying, Judge, I think it's because you guys all love the business, and that's why you could be crazy too.
Well, we were out most of the time. The jocks, because of the shifts that we had, we would never really could hang around together. But the salesmen, at the end of the day, they were free, and we used to go on. The Berlin Turnpike was our happy hunting ground each and every evening.
Well,
hey, Judge, were you there when Lee Baby was there or no?
No, yes. that was before my time. I think he was there about a year before I got there.
Now, Chuck and I worked with him in Miami. He was absolutely nuts.
Oh boy!
Steve mentioned John Flemming, and may rest in peace. And John was a supremely talented guy. I mean, he could do voiceovers, and I remember when he was doing United Airline commercials on TV. He had that face, like the everyman face, and he was getting a lot of TV work. But he opened the first night he started at Connecticut School of Broadcasting in 1975. He did the opener, to greet the students and whatnot. And then he was a sales guy at DRC, and a guy named Bill Hines and Tom Pate used to go every night after work. They'd go talking about what Judge is talking about. They'd go up to the Howard Johnson's Conference Center in Windsor Locks, and they would sit there and just drink all night long. It was like
Hines was a musician too, wasn't he?
Who's that?
Bill Hines was a musician too, wasn't he?
Oh, terrific piano player and composer. Still is, I'm sure. Bill's still around. He lives somewhere in Connecticut. Bill Hines, a very talented guy. But those guys used to do a lot of drinking.
I always said that going to work at DRC was like going to work at National Lampoon. Never know, it was crazy time.
Flemming sold me his ISDN box when he had no further use for it, and he was living in Miami and had pretty much given up doing the voiceover. So I bought his ISDN box for about $800, and by the time I sold my house, I just left it behind because it had no value.
I tell you though, I talk
bunches of
about
them on
insanity.
eBay.
Jim, oh my God, Fleming was totally insane, and no matter where, I mean, borderline Jonathan Winters. I mean, he was nuts. And I remember one time being down at the beach, and we went to the same beach down Crescent Beach down in Niantic. And I don't know, I jumped up. There was like a bee running around me or something, and I jumped up. And Fleming's on the other end of the beach, and all of a sudden looks at me and goes, and he starts like moving just like me, and he's like, just I don't. But I could ask, he would just take off. But a genius when you started talking about history. He would walk me through that whole beach area and explain the geography to me.
Yeah,
but
boy, he was Mr. Niantic. He grew up in that area.
Oh yeah, but I remember he told me one time he was talking to his little boy, and just out of the blue started looking at his bare feet, and he looks at his son. He looks at his son and he points at his feet. He says, "How old are you?" Really? He says, "You know, honey, he's worn all the way through these feet already."
When Dick Robinson owned WRCH and WRCQ, he did a promotion where they were giving away junk cars. He was giving away a car a day or a car a week or something like that. And he would get these old junk cars, and that's what you'd win. You'd win an old junk car. Well, Fleming was working for Dick Robinson then. I think he was either a program manager, program director, or operations manager. So he would drive those junk cars all around, and every day he'd show up with a 20-year-old junker. And yeah, John Flemming, he was something.
Have you guys ever heard of Richard Mack? He was a salesman at WPOP.
Yeah,
Mack was crazy too. But I got to tell you a story. He went up. He left WPOP and he went as a salesman up to WKBW in Buffalo. And he wasn't gone too long, maybe a couple of weeks. And I gave him a call up there. And I got the receptionist. I'd like to speak to Richard Mack. Oh, he's not in right now. Okay. Would you leave him a message for me? I said, yes. I tell him Dr. Whitney called and the girl he sent me is not pregnant. What? I said, just leave him that message, please. Thank you.
I thought you were going to tell the story about he was selling his someplace and goes into some store and the competing radio station was hawking the fact that they were in stereo, and he said, "Oh, but we're in hi-fi."
Yeah, I tell you, guys like Fleming. I remember he told me one time. I think he went on I think it was a ski a pitch for to get some ski business or something. And Fleming he went with Bill Hines, I think, and he made up a whole jingle. And I could still remember he was singing about wearing cheap clothes is wonderful, and that was that was his insanity was what made people want to, I think, do business with him. And like, Ron, like you and Rob and so many radio guys, they happen to sell, but they've worn every hat in the building. And
he came to POP as a salesman, stayed 1 week, and then after went on strike. And he was not a member. And I think he went to Pittsburgh and became the voice of Hines while after was on strike. And so he was at POP as a salesman for just a week, and then his voiceover career took off because he seized that opportunity.
Yeah, he did. He did very well, really well.
Yeah, when I first wanted to just dabble in that world, I was about 30, and I asked John if he could give me some insight as far as doing commercial work goes and everything. And he looked at me, and I could still see him probably through my whole life upside down. And sometimes I wonder. And I was about 30, and we were standing there at Crescent Beach, and it was off season. And I said, "I'm interested in doing this." He goes, "Well, quit your job." I said, "What?" He goes, "Just quit your job." So what do you mean? He goes, "You quit your job, and then I'll talk to you." He says, "Because until you've quit your job, it doesn't make any sense to even think about this." He says, "You really have to make that commitment." Yeah. He says, "You can always get a job." He says, "You can, but quit your job." And it took a few weeks, and I went around and I did that finally. And I called him up and I said, "I did it." And he gave me his coach. He gave me all the people to talk to, and he was always a great supporter of everybody. If you had that, I remember telling him that a car dealer wanted me to do some marketing for him, and he was up in Springfield. He says, "Where are you?" And I said, down home. And he goes, "I'll meet you for lunch." That same afternoon, immediately. He came right down. He sat there with me and pulls up, got the freaking Mercedes convertible, cigar in his hand, you know. But
Yeah.
he was he knew how to approach that. But Ron, you probably know what he did for Milt Rosenberg with
I was just thinking
Bernie.
about that. He was the voice and the
face.
face of Bernie's. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was on all the billboards and everywhere.
It was on the
everybody
signs
thought he
on the
was Bernie.
stores.
Yeah, he was, but his whole thing was he was like a sales trainer for all of the guys that worked there too.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't just do the commercials. What he did for Milton, from what I understand, was, you know, he was like more than just the talent. He would work all the time and get their numbers up.
You know who ruined that
People thought he was
relationship?
Bernie because his picture was
That's
on
right.
the
I
sign
said
on the
that.
store.
That's exactly right.
Hey, Steve, before I forget, you went to Crescent Beach. Did you know the Levinsons?
Oh, you know something? I didn't know them, but I do know they were right down by the water, weren't they?
A block off the water.
Yep. I know.
DNL?
Yeah, we had that was just it was just a great beach. Hennessy would come down all the time. Hennessy lives right around the corner from there, and he would come down, and he and my dad would sit there on the blanket and talk radio for forever. You know, it was just, you know, and then Flemming would show up, and you know, it was a tiny little beach, and the good thing about it was that even if it was the busiest, you know, weekend of summer, it'd be there. But you know, Charlie Parker, he would have that chair, and he'd be watching that side. We'd be driving down to Crescent Beach, and he'd see one cloud. They're on their way. They're already coming. You know, he would be swearing at the sky, and then we'd get down there, and the sun would be going down, and my sister and I would beg to leave, and he would keep adjusting his chair to go along with the sun, so he didn't have to miss any of the rays. When the sun was down, we could go home. It was crazy. Oh, good stuff. All right, guys, we're gonna have to wind things up. Is there anything you'd like to add before we go?
Can I insult Chuck Martin? Would that be okay?
Why do you allow people like Russ Oasis to come into this beautiful meeting? Why do you do that, Steve?
What about the $20? The whole reason for doing
Yeah,
it.
let's talk about right, Steve. Let's talk about that $20.
Can't believe that. Can't believe that.
He still owes it to me, Steve.
And he's never going to see it either.
You know, and that's the love and the brotherhood, and really why we get together every week for Radio Friends again, because there are things that we never, ever, ever forget. And
Steve, if that clown thinks he's ever going to see that $20 again, he is dumber than we thought.
Just imagine how much Chuck Martin owes me with interest from 1970 on that $20.
Wow.
You know, it's amazing. It's just how some things just never seem to go away. But I want to thank you guys for spending some time this morning, and really it's just great just to reconnect all the time like this. I look forward to it every week, and we never know which direction what's going to go into, but we do ask everybody though, if you have a thought or something, to pass it along. You know, somebody want to see if we can get on here, but honestly, more often than not, I think the ones that we enjoy the most is just when we just hang around like this and talk about things that are happening. And unfortunately, it's been a tough week and in some ways, but we get through it all together. And it's also a reminder why we do this. So we get to check in with each other from time to time and see the friends and the friendship that really never stops. So what we're going to do is we're going to get out of here. We're going to take, we'll be back again on the 18th of October. Did I get it right? Boy, sometimes I get that wrong.
Hey, Bob, don't forget to check with Chuck Knapp. See if we can get him on the Zoom. It would really be good.
I'm going to do that. I'm just sorry that we didn't hear more from Pat Sheehan.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the recollections of everybody. It's really just fun to listen.
One quickie, if I may. I was at the NAB this week, and the biggest topic was AI. And I believe that AI really means authentic input, just looking at the screen and all of these wonderful people that you share with us every week, Steve. Thank you.
Well, it's a way that keeps me from going crazy. And so I always say, you know, you guys
not working.
It's knowing somehow that, you know, that we are all connected that way. That's what really makes the difference. But, you know, I have to admit that we've been very, very fortunate to have this gathering. And, you know, and with everybody's lives changing the way that it does, the fact that we can still do this. So anytime you can stop by, even if it's just for a few minutes, and anyone who who you can think of that we might want to bring along, certainly do that. Subjects, of course, and I think maybe we should do that. Let's maybe talk about that on the next show. Let's talk about AI, and I think there were some emails going back and forth in the last couple of days about how the reality of the business, excuse me, is going to be AI, and how people had complained about voice tracking and all that, and how are people going to adapt to it? I don't know, but until then, we will stay live on Fridays, and if it's a little bit after quarter after 11 on Friday, the 11th of October, that means we are live. If you're watching us any other time, that's because Dave has edited and put it all together. And also, please remember, as we just see, with the loss of J.J. Jeffrey, excuse me, and the tough times he was going through. If you know of anybody going through tough times, or if you're having a tough time physically, financially, emotionally, whatever, you're not alone out there, because there is the Broadcasters Foundation of America. And you can turn to them. They're great supporting people that are going through challenges and showing you that you're not alone. And also, if some of you guys come across some bucks, maybe from maybe you sell your voice, you sell your AI for a few $100, and let people use your voice if you want. And Joe Connolly, that was the interesting one. Was that really Joe? I don't think that was a whole other discussion. And you pick up a few extra bucks for that, and you can spin a few dollars away towards the Broadcasters Foundation of America. It's certainly appreciated. And again, for those of you who haven't heard, congratulations to Dick Robinson being inducted into the Broadcasters Hall of Fame, the Connecticut Broadcasters Hall of Fame. That's going to be this Tuesday night. They're finally doing that. And I can tell you firsthand that was a man that was beyond humbled, just, believe it or not, from Dick Robinson, almost at a loss for words.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Totally.
Yep.
And now that they are making that more of an official program they're going to do every year, making that specific program the Hall of Fame evening, they're going to be doing it on a regular basis. And that's because the CBA finally decided to hand it off to someone else, a third party, and make it into more of an event. So congratulations to Dick. And again, thanks everyone.
Great guy.
Great guy.
Yeah, and Russ, we were on Martha's Vineyard, and we were having dinner. You didn't arrive yet. I'm in the can, and Dick Robinson comes in, and I could hear that big booming voice of his, and I'm in the toilet. Where's Terry Woods? Where's Terry Woods? Because he knew we were going to be there for dinner that night. And I'm in the can hearing Dick Robinson doing Terry Woods. I mean, that was a moment.
Dick is very well known throughout restrooms coast to coast.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that I was with him in Florida. I swear to God, we're in a limousine. We pull over to the side of the Florida highway or whatever, and we go in to use the restroom. And he's in there. As soon as he starts talking, some guy in the restroom goes, "Hey, that Dick Robinson?" I know. He's talking to the guy in the restroom. We walk outside. The guy opens the trunk of his car. He's trying to pitch Dick to play his music. I mean, it's like, again, another Dick Robinson restroom connection. And you just never know what else you're going to hear on Radio Friends again. Again, guys, thanks, everybody. Please support the Broadcasters Foundation of America.
See you next week.
We will catch you next week on Radio.
Steve.
Steve Barker.
Chucker.
Your friends, Radio Friends again. Radio Friends again. We've got a lot to share.